Welcome, and we're so glad you're here for another mental health and wellness chat. I'm Brittany, and I'm one of your VC Counseling Center counselors. And today I'm here with a very special guest. I'll let Sonia introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Sonia, the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Advisor here at Victoria College.
And we're here to have real conversations about the emotional challenges that students face and explore navigating them. So today's topic is really fun. It's perfectionism. That constant pressure to always perform, achieve, and never make a mistake. It can look like ambition on the outside, but inside, sometimes it can bring anxiety, burnout, and self doubt. So, perfectionism is something that many college students, and let's be real, staff also silently struggle with, and it often masquerades as ambition or being driven. So, together, we're going to unpack what perfectionism really is and how it can impact students. And we're going to also kind of explore how we can start letting go of this need to be perfect. So, I'll first turn it over to Sonia. We always start with a definition of what it is we're talking about here. What do you feel like perfectionism is for you? How would you define it?
I feel like I define it as needing to ensure that anything that I produce, whether it be at my job or my life, it has to be flawless.
Yeah.
I feel like I will get judged or criticized harshly for something being imperfect, and it's really stressful.
Well, so let me ask a probing question here. Who do you feel like specifically is going to judge you if something is not flawless?
Well, it depends. So if I'm at work, I feel that possibly my boss will think that, oh, that's not your best work.
Yeah.
And that to me is, well, a problem. It's my job. So then if my boss thinks like, oh, that's not a good product, or, you're not doing your best, then we need to rethink
Yeah.
like what we're doing. At home, not necessarily as much. I feel like my family is pretty supportive, but I do feel that like people looking inside from the outside. So let's say,
Yeah.
I don't know, somebody that sees me with my child or something, that they think like, well, that's not what I would have told my child.
It's even like anyone else. Or even so, do you feel like it's always someone outside of you, or do you feel like sometimes it's your expectation
It,
too?
it always ends up being mostly me who is really criticizing me to that point.
Yeah.
And so yes, the answer is me.
Yeah, and I feel like that's really relatable though, because it is. And I like these like really concrete definitions that we're giving here for things that people like struggle with perfectionism. So if we look at this from like a psychology clinical standpoint, right? So we have that clinical definition of perfectionism, which is when someone sets unrealistically high standards for ourselves. And usually this is combined with very harsh self-criticism and a fear of failure too. So it's not just that I have high expectations, but it's that those high expectations for myself lead to me being very critical of myself and the things that I do and the things that I believe, and then also fearing failing in some way. Whereas our everyday understanding or cultural definition of perfectionism would be usually it's seen as just like being really, really motivated or someone who's scared of making mistakes in some way. But I feel like it's important to highlight that usually with perfectionism traits, we have that high standard, and that leads to the self-criticism and fearing failure so much that it, for some people, I feel like it's almost like physically uncomfortable to even think about failure, much less actually fail, you
Right.
know?
It definitely is. It feels that stressful sometimes.
Yeah. So, okay, how has perfectionism shown up in your own life and work? What do you feel like are some concrete observations that you could see about perfectionism in someone's life?
So I want to say that I feel like I started seeing these when I was younger. So that's
Mhm.
kind of when to me, it kind of developed, I guess, having other people's expectations of me be kind of put on me. And so I just said, well, I must strive to do that. So this is where they hold me to these standards. So let me get to those standards. And there's nothing, I don't know how to explain it. I guess like there's nothing that can fall below that. Like it has to be this standard or higher than that.
Yeah.
And then of course, as you grow older, you just kind of carry that with you. At least that's kind of what's happened with me. I carried it through, you know, growing up, becoming an adult, into, university and then work. And what, like, for example, I had, I create videos, how-to videos for my students.
Yeah.
And I had been working on them for quite a while, and I kept showing them to my supervisor and my coworkers and saying, what do you think about it? I knew where there were some little tiny bits of where I could hear there was maybe an error or I paused too long or something.
Yeah.
And because of that, I felt like it wasn't ready. So my supervisor, my coworkers, they all thought, no, this is great. This is amazing. Like it's ready to go. And I'm like, no, but wait, it's
Mhm.
not ready to go. I hear this. Do you hear this?
Yeah.
And it was not, they didn't hear that. It was me.
Yeah.
I heard it, and it's okay to not have everything perfect as long as the message that I was trying to put out was right. So it's that internal struggle of knowing that the criticism is mainly coming from you, understanding that you have this perfectionism view of things that of how you do things, but also understanding that not everybody's looking at it this way, that you accomplished the task you came to do, you did your best, and that was
Yeah.
what mattered at the end of the day.
Well, I like that example that you give because I feel like it's pretty clear of this is the completing the task and then this is my expectation way
Right.
above it, right? And so and I think that that gives a really good example of how perfectionism can be self-immobilizing to a large degree where sometimes we end up not even being able to finish things because we're striving for such a standard that is so unrealistic that it's almost like we're never going to be happy with the outcome no matter what it is.
Right.
And I can relate to that a lot too, in that, and I've talked about this before on other episodes, that I struggle with compliments and being acknowledged for things that I do because for me, I see the flaws or I see the ways it could have been slightly better. I don't get as hung up these days on I can't put this piece out unless I feel like it's 100% perfect. I've compromised a lot where I'm like, okay, it's as good as it's going to get or as close as it's going to get. So let's put this out. But then I struggle with people acknowledging
Right.
things that I don't feel like are perfect. Even my bachelor's degree, when I graduated, walked the stage, which is obviously objectively a big deal, right?
Right.
I was so uncomfortable with that whole process because I felt like I could have made higher grades in a lot of my classes. I feel like I could have studied a lot more. So it almost felt like I didn't earn it as much. So I'm not allowed to feel accomplished or, whatever it might be in this moment. And perfectionism can be all that to say, it can be very self handicapping in that way where we can't even appreciate the things that we do complete or achieve because we have these standards that are so internalized.
Right. And I do feel that you can get stuck. You can get lost in that I'm stuck here and I just will not move.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've some of the things that I've done for that are aside from understanding and being aware that I'm the one creating this.
Mm-hmm.
um, I have made goals that are so, for example, at my job, I've created goals for myself that I will work on this and to know that something is good enough and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
So slowly, my supervisors work with me as I
Yeah.
try to, and they can see where I'm coming from. And yes, the driven, she's very driven and motivated.
And I think it's really interesting too to consider even that I feel like school and the structure of academics plays a big role in fostering and maintaining perfectionism too, right? Because I found this when I graduated from school, and maybe you can speak to this too, Sonia, of like even all the way back to elementary school, right? It was so nice to be evaluated on a grading
Yeah.
system, right? Like, oh, I made an A or I made a 98. That means I can improve. Sorry. Or, I you would get direct feedback, you would get number scores for the things that you performed at. And we do this for so long, most of our lives. And then we go into higher education and we continue to do the same exact thing. And we get even more feedback from great professors that take the time to do that. And then all of a sudden you graduate. Now, how do I evaluate my self worth
Right.
after I've placed it on academics for so long? And so that's something I see in students that even come to the counseling center too of, how do I start to develop a sense of self-worth that is outside of, and then you couple that with perfectionism too of, well, I'm just striving to get a 4.0 or to make an A in this class. It can set us up for struggles with self-esteem, worth, and value even after we leave school. Because it does. I feel like it plays a huge role.
It does. With my students, I do tend to see that they are, again, science, technology, engineering, math,
Mm-hmm.
and they are very detail oriented as well. And they're very motivated. And now these are some degrees that have high standards, I guess, for requirements for acceptance. But I do see the students that come in that are struggling, that are like, well, if I made a 3.5, why can't I make a 4.0?
Yeah.
And they'll retake a class that they've already passed successfully and is a great grade, and they want to retake it because if they made a B, I can make an A. And I can see the stress. And we do talk about it. So though I am critical of myself and am guilty of doing this to myself, I do try to get others to be aware of them doing it and then trying to help them cope with it so that
Yeah.
they can understand that it does not have to be perfect. We can still have a good chance of getting into program A. Or this semester is not going that great. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. Let's go
Yeah.
ahead and think about what we can do for the next semester. Um, that is just one of the things that I do see and encounter with my students. The other is, if I can do 4 classes, I can also do 5,
Yeah.
and then they
For
take too
sure.
many. Which, granted, most of these degrees do have a lot of classes that they have to complete. So, in hindsight, like it's okay. You'll do it at the university, but also we're starting off from the
Yeah.
very beginning. Let's go ahead and kind of just see what this is about
Yeah.
before.
Get our feet wet before we're drowning. Yeah.
Exactly. And we don't want to start off with 15 or 18 credit hours right off the bat, but also understanding the requirements for the different degrees and just trying to get a perfect balance for that specific student.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if we break this down even further, I liked this conceptualization of perfectionism. So it breaks it into 3 different types of perfectionism, right? So the first one is self oriented perfectionism. So this is where I hold myself to impossible standards. So it's mostly about me, my expectations of my own behaviors, my achievement, my performance, whatever it might be. The next would be socially prescribed perfectionism. So, this is where I believe that others expect me to be perfect. So, a good example of this one is like maybe you got perfectionism expectations from your parents. And so I feel like unless I'm perfect, my parents, aren't going to be proud of me, aren't going to love me, aren't going to support me, whatever it might be. And it can also even be like with spouses, partners, really anyone socially in our life. It's not necessarily that I think I have to be perfect all within myself. It's that I feel like other people expect for perfection from me. And then the third one is going to be other oriented perfectionism. So this is when I expect perfection from other people. And I feel like this is an interesting one if you get put in a position sometimes where you supervise people,
Right.
because I feel like I start to fall into this thinking trap sometimes of I expect everyone to be on my level or above me, even if they're being supervised by me sometimes. So yes, it can be something that, maybe we expect other people to be able to read our mind. Maybe we expect other people to be able to do all the things that they try to do the first time that they do it. Another good example of this is like reflecting on our own expectations for our children too. Do we expect perfection from our children, or are we flexible and allowing of failures or struggles or whatever they might be? So I like this definition and way to think about it, because I feel like obviously you can have all 3 of these, but it's an interesting way to think about where are the roots of my perfectionism, and what these perfectionistic thoughts, like how do they interact with people around me too? And I think it is important to also recognize while we're talking about this here, though, that I guess we're not trying to make the argument that you shouldn't try and you shouldn't strive for things in your life and that you shouldn't have expectations, because you should have all of these things. You should have goals. It's good to have expectations. It's good to hold yourself to a certain standard, whatever that might be. But there is a difference between that and unhealthy levels of perfectionism. And I wanted to give you some space here, Sonia, to kind of talk about your experiences with this. Like, how could someone go about understanding the difference in their own life?
This is definitely one of those things that I had to sit myself down and have a
Mhm.
conversation with myself for. I think I was in college, and I was also working full time, going to college full time. I was doing extracurricular activities I used to work at a school. So I did extracurricular activities for students there.
Yeah.
So my entire day was full. So my day started at 5 and it ended about 11 or 12 at night. So I had to sit down and say, what part of this is needing to be 1,000%, not even 100. You're going way above that.
Mhm.
Why?
Yeah.
Are we not, if we do 100%, is that not good enough? And why is it not good enough? So I had to evaluate the things that I was putting effort on and say, is this good enough? And the way that I guess ended up reflecting on that was, I'm trying my best. That means I'm not giving it like not enough motivation towards it. Like, I'm motivated to do well. I'm motivated to do this. I want to go above and beyond. But then I said, well, what's a, past that?
Yeah.
What's past that, and why am I doing that? And everybody else is okay here, and I know that it's not because their standards are lower.
Mhm.
I know it's because they must be seeing something that they think is good.
Yeah.
So this part here is just the added me that I need to just tone down a little bit.
Yeah.
So examples of that were, I was still doing full time. I wanted to finish school. I started taking some of the extracurriculars that I was doing and saying, what is this for? I need to reflect and see and prioritize things that actually needed that full attention. So I started doing that with, even minimal tasks at home. I'd make a list of the things that needed to be done and saying, why am I doing this? Is it because it needs to be done?
Yeah.
Or am I doing this because I want it to be done different and at this level? Not that it didn't get done. Like, I did my cleaning. Let's say, for example, I cleaned the house, and then I said, well, hold on, it's not done yet.
Mhm.
Everything still needs to be like, you can
Yes.
perform surgery in this house clean, but it's
Yeah.
like, okay, it's clean. What else do we need to do with that? Like, why is this still not okay enough to our standards?
Mhm.
Like, and so of course you go through that list and start to notice that there are things that you're putting on there that are impossible. Um, I want to say that with work, the same thing. It's, I like the videos that I explained. So the another project I had was it was like a manual to kind of help all of the advisors that are, that were here now. If we were ever to be busy and they had questions, they could always refer to this manual and
Yeah.
just kind of see the procedures, and it's something that you can take a quick look at, without having to have somebody that you need to go run to.
Yeah.
And for the longest, I kept saying, I'm going to release it on this day, but it wasn't done. Well, this is a life document. It's never going to
Yeah.
be done. So the expectation that I was going to put this out when it was 100% done
Yeah.
was unrealistic.
Mhm.
Um, Again, as I sit down with my supervisors and I say, here are the goals that I am working on, and that goal being that I need to ensure that my perfectionism or my detail oriented, or, the
Yeah.
motivated, the very driven, isn't going into an expectation that's unrealistic and unhealthy for me.
Yeah.
I need to be able to evaluate and say, nope, let's tone it down, step back a
Mhm.
little bit. Is this good? Is this a good product? Did I give it my best?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Is it perfect? No, it's not going to be perfect. I'm not a
Mhm.
robot. I'm
Yeah.
not a machine. And even
Uh-huh.
then, robots and machines still make mistakes.
Well, and even then too, perfectionism is so subjective in the sense
Right.
that we all define what perfection is for any given thing. And I like where you ground that back in though, because I feel like that's a good anchor point, right? Of, when I am doing a task, objectively looking at myself in my life and saying, okay, the way that I perform, is it higher than 90% of people that perform? So if we all were to sit down and do the same exact task, 30 of us, 29 of those people, right? What are they going to call good enough with this thing? And then, okay, so am I the one that is making it need to be above and beyond? And is that draining me in the process? And I think if both of those things are met, then that could be okay. Then maybe this is unhealthy perfectionism. Burnout, feeling like I can't get anything done because I'm having to hyper focus on so many minimal things. If I have so much negative self talk that I feel terrible about myself, and even though I did this in grad school, even though I'm objectively achieving and I'm getting outstanding student of the year and I'm doing all of these things, I still feel like it's not good enough when 90% of people would be so proud and say, good
Right.
enough, great job. Or even difficulty acknowledging that you did something good, I feel like is a good indicator for that, because usually with perfectionism, we have trouble labeling anything we do as good and great. And this is my favorite work that I've done for myself and in my life, or whatever that might be. So those are some really good examples of common signs and behaviors. And if we move into now some of the roots and causes, right? Because this is mostly about mental health. Of course, we're going to
Right.
go there. So where do we feel like, that's a big question I get a lot of times from students, is like, where did this come from? Why do I do this? And I guess we'll start with you, Sonia. Did you notice any patterns growing up that could have contributed to your own struggles with perfectionism?
Actually, yes. In my reflection states, as I tried to conquer this, I wanted to know, because, that's part of that, is like, you want to know where this came from.
Yeah.
So I go back to my childhood. So both my parents didn't finish high school. So again, their expectations of, you're going to have a better life than me,
Yeah.
and you're going to do better than me. And so their expectations now become my expectations. And now I take it upon myself that it's now my mission to accomplish what they didn't. So I'm also carrying them with me in the process.
Yeah.
So they will graduate from high school with me, and they're going to graduate from college with me. And so in my earlier years, I was always a pretty advanced student, and I had really high grades in like elementary schools where it started. They moved me up grades, and for one reason or another, socially, my mom just wanted to keep me in the lower grade, so she put me back in the grade that I was supposed to be in.
Yeah.
It's a little struggle trying to get along with other children of other ages, but going further into that, there was awards, award ceremonies. And so they give you these awards. And so you're sitting there carrying all these awards. And I'm not trying to brag on myself or anything like that, but this is kind of where I feel it came from. So the teachers would always say, oh, this is a great job. You did the best. You always do the best. They'd send me to other schools to get, they'd nominate me and send me to other schools for awards and prizes. So of course that always became the baseline standard for me.
And that feels good. And you want to
Right.
keep feeling
Right.
that way.
Well,
Yeah.
it made my parents happy.
Yeah.
And this is like, well, you never got this. So I got this for you. So
Yeah.
it was like, I did this for you. But then when you weren't doing your best, let's say, for example, you were having a day.
Yeah.
And then let's say at school, maybe it wasn't my best work for the day, but it was good enough. It was better than most still. But then my teacher would say something like, for example, I know you can do better than this. And that was kind of, to me, was hurtful and it was harmful. So it made me be like, okay, well, I can never be under this. Like, it must always be 100 or above a 95, or I will never be good again. Like, I will not get the same praise, and you must do the best that you can. You know how to do this. Why are you not doing that? But you're doing a great job. Oh, you're the smart one. Oh, you're very, very smart. And oh, you got moved up grades, or you're, getting these certificates now, or sending me off to some thing. There was an event, the congressman came by and gave me an award himself. So it's like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So then you have a wall full of all of your awards. And then again, now that is your new baseline. And so now I must always have the award. I must always be the best one.
Yeah.
And then you carry that with you to middle school and high school. And then, of course, you do get the hyper fixation where now I'm stuck here. And if I can't complete this to 100%, I cannot finish doing this, but I also cannot start on these other things.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I feel like it's harmful to kind of, see it in that way. Not that my parents were trying to harm me in the process. They didn't know. They, they were doing the best that they could. But little things like that can definitely lead to a life kind of like, the perfectionism life, and struggling with that. As a parent now, I'm trying very hard to not put that on my child, my own son. A lot of the times in early development, I feel like I've read a lot of articles that have stated that, children are already a little self-critical, and they want to do things the best way. They see you doing it, so they want to do it at your level. So as children do struggle with, I didn't do it well enough, and then they get upset when they don't.
Yeah.
So when I see that, I say, it's okay. Sometimes we make mistakes, and it's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. You did your best.
Yeah.
So I try to give that. And when he does a great job, I say, well, that was really good. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
How do you feel you did today? Or how do you feel you did on that drawing? So I try to turn it around to where it's not constant praise. Like, I'm very proud of you. I say things like, you must be very proud of yourself for doing this or for accomplishing this, and not saying like, this is the best work and must always be perfect, So I am trying to not have him do the same thing. I don't want him stuck in the same struggle and the same stress. And when I catch myself doing it at home, I will say, take a deep breath. Okay, let's talk about this. And I'll talk to myself out loud so he can see me and hear me modeling that.
Yeah.
And I'll say, it's okay to not do 100% perfect. I'm doing my best, and that's all that matters. And then I'll take a deep breath, and then he'll even come in and he'll say, "It's okay, mommy. You're doing your best." And that's all I want for
That's
him
so
to
cute,
learn.
yeah. And I love that. And I love that you brought parenting up too, because I was thinking along the same lines as you were talking too of, this is one of the first places to start is kind of looking at and identifying, and we're not blaming anyone, but just saying, because I agree with you, like my parents were the same way. I was first into in the sense of like, there's this immense pressure of you have to go to college, be successful so you can make money and have things that we could never give to you when you were younger, on top of the explicit messages of them saying, oh, you got an 85. That's okay, but we know you can do 100, so I need you to work on this. And it wasn't in malice or being mean. It was just that they want the best for us and from us. And I love that you bring up trying to break these cycles, because as I've gotten older, I talk like I'm a grandma, but I'm not that old. But as I've gotten wisdom in my years, I tried really hard to break that, kind of like you've been doing with your child of, trying to not set my daughter up for the same exact mistakes that I had of, hey, it's okay to make an 80. It's okay to fail a test sometimes, so long as we learn from it, we grow, let's regroup, let's figure it out. And I feel like it's so hard because she still struggles with it. I just told her the other day, I was like, I tried so hard to break this cycle for you. Like, please stop blaming yourself. It makes me so sad. But I think part of it too is just being externally driven. And I think that is a big factor of we're seeking the validation of those around us to a degree of I need you or a grade or something to tell me that I'm good enough. We're placing our self-esteem and self-value outside of us. And I think that's a big component too, versus now that I'm older, I can take a step back and say like, no, I still have worth, even if I'm not successful by other people's measures. I can still feel good about myself and celebrate an accomplishment. So yeah, I wanted to point that out, that I feel like a key of it is seeking validation outside of ourselves rather than just believing that we have worth for being a human,
Right. And one of those things I think is like I do with myself on a regular basis, but I do with my son as well. We do affirmations and we say I am good enough. Um like for example, one of the ones that I do with him is mommy and daddy love me just the way I am.
Yeah.
Because he needs to understand that whatever he is, whatever he wants to be good at or be driven by or try his best on or not try his best on, we're going to love him regardless of that.
Yeah.
And not to say that I think my parents, held that over me or anything like that. They did not. They very much left me just the way I was. But I feel like letting him know that even if he makes a mistake, it's fine. Like we're still going to love you the same. It's okay to, not put you 100% into this task. Maybe you don't, that's not a task that is interesting to you. And that's okay. But at least you tried.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a really great point to make, and it's really well spoken. And when we talk about, so looking at kind of evaluating ourselves, right? Looking at, obviously, we know that perfectionist traits can be rooted in developmental roots. So kind of like what we were just talking about, right? Early praise or criticism, either one from parents or teachers or authority figures in our life when we were younger. And it can come from, like I was saying, where we kind of equate our worth with performance or validation from other people. And a lot of it is rooted in, this is part of natural child development. Those of you that have taken the psychology, shout out to that class. But this is part of a natural human development, right? Is from certain ages, we equate our worth as a person with our ability to perform at things. But we should start to move away from that and find worth from within ourselves as we age. But a lot of times we get stuck in that. I know that I did. I got stuck in that for a very long time of my early life. So this can be one place that it can kind of find its roots in. And then also environmental pressures, right? So if we are in a very competitive academic culture, for example, if you go to, a larger university that is a very competitive university, that's going to foster some of this perfectionist thinking. Or even if you're in a competitive program here at VC, there's a lot different mindset than, a general major a lot of the times. There's a lot more expectations from professors, from, faculty, whoever it might be. Social media comparisons can be another big environmental pressure that we feel. a lot of times we see the highlight reel of other people's lives and we don't see their struggles. So there's a lot of questions or thoughts like, why don't I have everything together like they do? Or why can't I achieve these goals or expectations or do these things that they're doing? And then another big one is cultural and family expectations, right? So especially in our first gen students, especially in our immigrant students or high achieving communities, even. I mean, and it's also something to reflect on with yourself of like, what are my own cultural expectations about perfection and about things being done? What are my family's expectations? Because each family, each culture is different in that way. So, and I'll pose the question to you, Sonia. You work with students every day too. Do you notice perfectionism showing up differently in students from different backgrounds, identities? Like, do you feel like it has different presentations or is it always the same?
I feel that it does have different presentations. I feel like some have it a little stronger than others for
Mhm.
sure. And that would be with students that are first gen,
Yeah.
immigrant students. The other ones would be students that are wanting to get into medical school
Oh,
or,
yeah.
engineering programs, or just the students that are, once again, carrying the entire load for the entire family.
Yeah.
Um, I have noticed at some point some students will bring their parents with them. And again, the parents want their best. That is their goal, is to have the best for them.
Yeah.
And I will ask the student, what is your major? And the parent will say, well, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
be an engineer. And the student is not responding to me. So they'll take, the first semester of classes and not do well. And then I'll
Yeah.
ask them, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
I understand what your family would like for you to do, but what do you want to do? So then we'll have a conversation, excuse me, about that. And we'll try to recenter ourselves towards something more realistic and more, what do we want, as opposed to
Yeah.
why are we doing this in to begin with. So I do have those conversations with my students. I will say, we might need to do another meeting to map out your degree plan. Let's turn this into, let's figure out why we're doing this degree.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't think you can do that degree. I absolutely believe you can do every single degree that you want to do. It's just, you have to have that motivation and that drive to do that specific degree, but you also have to have that be born from inside of you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as part of you. And so we will have those conversations. We will also talk about the how the expectations can be a little harmful, and we'll suggest, support services. And I'll say, let's go talk about this to somebody that can definitely help you kind of organize these thoughts. STEM family night.
Yeah.
That is for students that are going in a STEM oriented direction, to bring their families so that they can learn about what STEM life is like,
Yeah.
and what the expected studying hours are, the classes you must take, the stress and the pressure that you're under, so
Mm-hmm.
that parents can also see the struggle that you're doing here. A lot of first gen students are also students that are helping out with their families at home, with income or anything like that. So they expect for you to go to school, have the best grades, but then also you go home and you must also work and contribute to
Mm-hmm.
the family. Again, this is just part of, they want the best for you.
Yeah.
Not pointing fingers and saying they're doing something bad. They're just trying to do whatever is best, and it
Yeah.
can be that way. This helps you and your family kind of understand the dynamic of your degree, the requirements, the stresses that you have in life, and then how does this all tie into
Yeah.
regular personal life.
Yeah.
And so I do see it in a lot of the students. Now, there are students that have, parents that possibly may have broken the cycle or don't put their expectations, which is, again, great when you start reflecting on those. But you're still always going to have a little bit of, I'm still driven because of the external.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I do tend to see a lot of students that want to match other students going into that
Yeah.
program. And again, as long as you're doing it in a healthy way, and that you are understanding that you are understanding, I did my best. You
Yeah.
can't do more than just your best. Like, you,
Mm-hmm.
to achieve 1,000% like
Yeah.
perfection is
Knowing
very
when to call
impossible.
it. I feel like knowing when to
And
call it is a big
yes,
point with perfectionism. Yeah.
even if you have to, tap in a friend and say, come tell me that everything's fine.
I do the same thing. I'll tap someone in and be like, "Am I doing the most right now, or am I doing enough right
Yeah.
now?" Because there is a difference between those two things. And I love everything that you said. And I would also add, I feel like healthcare is a big one for whatever reason. personality that is drawn to
Yes.
healthcare is also the personality at a risk of perfectionistic beliefs and expectations. And oh man, like I feel like a lot of the times perfectionist traits are born out of good intentions
Mhm.
early in life. Yes, sometimes they are born out of criticism, harshness, and negativity, but I feel like it starts with the best of
Right.
intentions. It's just we internalize it in a warped way where things become all or nothing, black and white, perfect or failure, and that's where it can become a problem and lead to, we know these types of thinking patterns, behaviors, they can lead to anxiety, depression, chronic stress, and even imposter syndrome a lot of the times for people, which
Yes.
if you have not listened to that episode, I would definitely go check that one out when you're done with this one of, it can have a lot of negative impacts on our mental health and well-being, especially when left unchecked and especially whenever it has a tendency to kind of spiral for people a lot of the times and web out into all different areas of our life and thinking and well-being. And Sonia, you're the advisor. I'll let you speak to academically. How can this become a problem for students?
So this can become a problem for students when the major one I see is students that don't want to ask for help from the tutoring center, for example, or the total learning lab.
Yeah.
Um, because, well, no, I have to get this on my own. I don't need help from somebody else. Like that means that I'm failing.
Yep.
Me asking for somebody to help tutor me is me failing in class. And I have to remind them that no, because if we already knew everything there was to know, we wouldn't have to go to college. We would just be
Exactly.
given a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of those is understanding that we need the help, asking for the help, and then actually following through.
Yeah.
So I have and am known for let's go to tutoring together. I will walk them there. I will wait with them until somebody starts talking to them so I know they're not going to run away.
Yes.
Because I did the same thing. I would,
Mhm.
ask, "Hey, where's the tutoring center?" They'd give me a little map and I'd go and then I walk by and I look through the window. I'm like, "Oh, they have enough people. They don't need
I'm not
any
doing
more.
that.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm just going to go home. I know how to study." So then I'd go
Mhm.
home and I did study, but it became procrastination
Yeah.
because now I'm like, well, it's either going to be 1,000% perfect or I'm not. So it wasn't all or nothing. And so you get stuck in that struggle of you never started or you never finish it.
Yeah.
And then it gets stressful. And when you're stressing yourself out, then you just block everything out. The information makes no sense at that point.
Mhm.
So I do see it there. I have students that will say, well, I have this big essay due, but I have a fear of writing this essay and it's not my best subject, but it must be perfect because all
Mhm.
my other grades are A's, and this is the one that I'm struggling in. So they will not start that essay. And
Yeah.
before you know it, it's last minute and either they're scrambling and they will not get the
Mhm.
best grade they could get because they didn't have enough time or they overthink things. I've had students come in trying to drop a class because they thought they were failing the class.
Yeah.
And they came in, they were in tears. I had to talk to her and I said, okay, hold on. Have you spoken with your instructor? That's always going to be my first question when you want to drop a class. Have you spoken with your instructor? Have you let them know? The reason I'm saying this is they know you in the class.
Mhm.
I don't know what your grades are currently. And so I said, it could be that maybe they just didn't put all the grades in yet. Maybe, they're still grading.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to talk to your instructor first and then just keep me in the loop. We'll continue with that. But I really need you to just let's take a deep breath.
Mhm.
I know you've been doing the best that you can, so let's go talk to your instructor. So she did, and it turns out she had a 90 in that class
Nice. Yeah.
that she was going to drop because she thought she had a 60. So
That's my favorite outcome to these
yes,
situations. Yes.
and so it's one of those where you kind of
Mhm.
you put a blinder on yourself because then you're just kind of saying like, no, I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
I this is not good enough. The professor probably thinks I'm slacking in their class.
Mhm.
My boss doesn't think that I'm doing like the best job. He hasn't told me anything because he's just waiting to just come in here and have a big meeting and say you're
Yeah.
done with or something. And
Mhm.
it's that again tapping that person in, tapping somebody in, whether it be your advisor, your counselor that's on campus, friend,
Yeah.
somebody, and saying, "Here's what I'm feeling right now," and then you're not stuck in that loop anymore because then they help you talk through it. They bring you out of that and say, "Well, let's try this first." So the students coming in and letting me know what's going on or that they've taken too many classes on and us having to rethink about how many classes we should be taking, etc., helps a lot of my students that are going into the struggles that come with it.
Yeah.
They end up, when they take these classes, if they don't feel that they're doing 100%, a lot of the times they feel like they didn't earn this grade. And
Yeah.
though they have an A, they may want to retake the class to get the A because they want to feel like they earned it. And I can totally understand that. But I'm like,
Yes.
well, you didn't earn it. This instructor would not have given you that
Yeah,
grade. So you
exactly.
definitely earned it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's a loop of perfectionism, though, is my standards rather than the objective reality, which is that you made an A in that class, or
Right.
that you objectively did well at this thing. And it's kind of a skew of reality for most people. Because like I said, it comes down to subjectively evaluating, right? I don't think that I did good enough, even though everyone else on the planet would agree that I did good enough. I don't
Absolutely.
believe that. And that's where the root of the issue lies, is within my own perceptions, which is actually a positive thing because that's empowering, because our perceptions are something that we can moderate and tweak and add some flexibility into. And the only thing that I would add too is like avoiding risk, because I feel like I did that a lot. I would do a statistical calculation in my head of the likelihood and probability of failure for
Yes.
things that I was thinking about doing. And if that rate approached too high for my comfort, then I would just not do things
Right.
because I'm probably going to fail that anyway and I don't know enough. So it almost becomes like self-handicapping too, where we're not even putting ourselves out there. We're not
No.
doing things that could challenge us for growth and change and all of these positive things because we're so scared of failing that we won't even try in the first
Right.
place, which leads to us, just like I said, isolating, not taking opportunities and challenges and things that, could have a very positive impact on our life that, would make us really happy.
And funny thing is, when you asked me to do this podcast, I
I
was like, oh dear Lord.
was going to say, are you going to tell them about the whole
Yes,
rabble that
I
we
am.
had
I
today? Go
am.
ahead.
So I was nervous. I get nervous because this is not something that I do on a regular basis. So it's not something I'm versed in.
Yeah.
There's no script.
Nope.
This is all freestyling.
Very loose scripts.
And I'm very much that person that wants to have a script. I want to do a run through, make sure
Mhm.
that I did, I caught any mistakes, etc. But this morning, Brittany, messaged me and said, "Hey, do you want to reschedule this? How are you feeling?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to feel the same way either way." One of the things that I do to work through this is I tell myself, "We're going to do this, and we're just going to hope for the best." And that was kind of one of my tactics,
Mhm.
one of my tips to be like, let's do this.
Well, and I feel like the funniest part of all of that, though, was that I forgot to create even a loose script, and Sonia confronted me yesterday at an event of like, "Hey, are you gonna, send me a script for tomorrow?" And I was like, "Oh no, it is tomorrow, isn't it?" So it's almost like it was giving you a meditation and perfectionism
Right.
and letting things be. So yeah, no, accidental therapy that I absolutely
Yeah.
did not plan, but here we are because I'm just like way too busy right now, and I genuinely forgot we were doing this.
But, back to your not having the script, accidental therapy,
Mhm.
part of me could have said, hey, no, let's reschedule.
Yeah.
But again, as I try to understand that I have this problem and that I try my hardest to not
Yeah.
continue that problem and also not to exude this not only behavior but this characteristics, because I don't want my son picking them up
Yeah.
and or my students. I want my students to know that, like, yes, I can be like that, but also I kind of have a grasp on this and here's what we're doing.
Mhm.
So this is kind of that moment. I said, let's go ahead and do it. It's going to be what it's going to be. And,
Yeah.
there's not going to be a script, and well, it'll be a surprise to everybody how it comes out.
Well, and I think that is a big part of it too, is trusting yourself and trusting people around you too, because that's what I had to lean into as I started trying to work through this was like, I'm not trusting myself to be able to, I'm not trusting that I'm smart enough to get through something that I'm not comfortable in. I'm not trusting myself that I'm not knowledgeable and skilled enough to have a conversation. I've taken a philosophy of winging it with certain things. Like for example, presentations. I like trusting myself that I know enough about anxiety to stand up here and talk about it, which I absolutely do know enough about anxiety to do a presentation like that. But you know what I mean? Of like, and I'm not encouraging you guys, do not just wing your whole life. I mean, hey, it works for some people, not me and my anxiety, but Regardless, bringing it back around to the topic at hand, though. So perfectionism also shows up in relationships, right? And I know, Sonia, you can probably relate to this. Difficulty delegating.
Oh,
I
yes.
bless my
Oh my
husband's
gosh.
heart. You were talking about cleaning earlier,
Yes.
and it triggered me. There are times where when we struggle with perfectionism, we have difficulty delegating tasks or giving tasks to other people because of our expectations. So
Right.
my expectation is that when you sweep the floors, you need to make sure that you sweep in these various particular areas because
Yes.
that's where the most dirt accumulates. And if you didn't sweep there, then I'm going to assume that you didn't sweep at all. So to make sure that it gets done in the exact way that I want it done, it's easier if I just do that thing.
Yes.
But the problem is when we do this with everything in our
Yep.
life, it's easy to get extremely overwhelmed and there's not enough time in a day to do all of those things to those standards a lot of the times. So part of it is, and that's why I say, bless my husband. I don't know why he looks at things. It's like he looks at things and he's like, what is the most challenging way that I could get this done? And then chooses that path. It drives me insane. But that's part of delegating, though, is taking a deep breath and recognizing like other people have their own ways of doing things. And just because I do things one way does not make it the rightest or most perfect way. Maybe their way has value in the sense of that it's different and that it's going to be a different perspective on things and that we're going to learn and grow through this different way of doing things. It's also about letting go of that perfectionism of my way is the only right way
Yes.
of doing things. And I feel like that's such a big thing, especially in relationships. And it can have a really big negative impact on your relationships.
It is. And it's also one of those things where, again, you're modeling this behavior to your children as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to also stop my child what he's doing and say, you're doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
You're not playing right. That's not how you're supposed to play with it however you want.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Those two characters talk to each other. They don't even know each other in
Yeah.
the Marvel world or whatever. But sure,
Look
that
it
means
comes to
that
Marvel.
like whatever. But yes, and it was funny that you mentioned the taking the tasks on. So my mom always says, if you want something done right, do it yourself.
Yep.
And the reason she says that, it's not because it's not being done right. It's not being done the way she would like for it to be done. And I understood that later.
Yeah.
And so yesterday I was talking to one of my other coworkers and we saw a post that said, one of my toxic traits is I want to do everything my way because everything is, I want to clean my way because I know it's going to get done. It's going to be clean, but also getting mad that nobody else wants to help me.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, you're not letting them help you because you're like, no, just let me do it myself.
Yep.
But then that is, you're also breaking that trust with that person that, is with you, like your husband, like my husband, or even my son. Like, I don't want him growing up thinking like, oh, I did this wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so, some people can also do that to like their coworkers, for example, like you're doing that wrong,
Yeah.
or you're doing it this way. And it's that takes a lot longer.
Yeah. And it's about control at the end of the
Right.
day. And and that's kind of the central theme of perfectionism too, if we look at it that way. Of perfectionism is a attempt to control life and outcomes of things, which is by definition irrational and unrealistic. You cannot control anything about your life most
Right.
of the time, other than your reaction to what's going on. That's the only thing that you can control. But it does. Perfectionism comes across as controlling because we're trying to control the things that we can to get the outcome that we want. Which obviously we know that excessive amounts of control in any relationship or social environment, usually people don't like that and people tend to try to avoid it, or it leads to arguments or disagreements or tension in some way. And then obviously, perfectionism can lead to a lot of sensitivity with criticism or feedback. So it can make it hard to navigate life at work, or it can make it hard to navigate even your romantic relationships where, if I have perfectionistic traits and my partner tells me, if I feel like I'm a relatively okay partner and my partner tells me, no, I feel like unheard when you talk, there's going to be a lot of sensitivity to that of how could you feel that way? I do everything that I can to try to make you feel, you can already hear the irrationality, make you feel heard. Like, how could you say something like that? So all of these are natural reactions and products of perfectionistic traits, but maybe these are things that we've never really noticed or taken note of in our relationships. So we can talk about them now. And then the last one, Sonia, I'll turn over to you, burnout.
Oh my gosh, yes. You take on too much. You definitely take on too much. Even talking about the relationship that you just brought up, like that's probably why it causes tension in relationships too, is, the burnout part. because you're seeing it as a recipe, like the things that you can control. So like I'm overcompensating for the things that I cannot control. So I'm going to take control of the things that like I create, the tasks that I do, treating the relationship as a task and then saying like, well, I'm doing everything to make it perfect. But it's like, no, because in doing that, you're disconnecting from the person as a person that needs to be heard and seen and has emotions. So
you're once again having your expectation of what you need to be and doing it rather than asking for feedback.
Exactly. And so one of the things with the burnout is that it can happen at home. So like, at home, I'm that person. I'm the perfectionist. My husband's more of the winging it. So I will take on every single task and then I'm burnt out. And then it just turns into this, I don't want to say meltdown.
Well, it's like, why is no one helping me more? But it's like, how are we supposed to help you?
Right. It's one of those, but it's one of those where you just kind of, it just all just comes out. Like you are holding on to so much that it finally starts to overflow.
Oh yeah.
And it can either be in an emotional outburst or it can be in like, a discussion where you feel like, oh, well, I thought I was doing the best thing that I could do. But, you're telling me that I have these things that I'm flawed in and they don't mean any harm. They just want to be, again, heard or, so within that, like even at work, like you feel like at some point you're just not doing your best and you feel that everything that's coming out of you is weak, is not good enough. And I've had those conversations with my supervisors and out of the both of my supervisors are very supportive, but there's the one that always comes in and says, hey, what's up? And I'm like, hey, and they will say, I'm just checking in on you. And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I know you're fine because you're dependent, dependable and you're independent, but how are we really doing? What are we doing? What are we working on? Why is that one first? And, not that they're micromanaging, but this person has the best interest and they know that I can tend to get away a little bit. And so there are times that because this person has come in and checked in on me, I will go in when I'm feeling burnout and say, hey, I am feeling like everything that's coming out of me product wise, whether it be here at home, is not my best. I feel like this is the worst I've ever done. And I don't think it's good enough. And they will have that conversation with me. Like, let's talk about the things that you have produced or the things that you have done. And then we'll list them all. And what was your expectation for this? What was the purpose of this? Well, it was to get students to do this. Did students do that? Did it help them? Well, yes, it did. Okay, so you did accomplish that. Okay, let's go to the next one. So you sometimes need that person to kind of reel you back in a little bit. But yes, the burnout is real. You feel the horrible stress. And then it gets into this where you're feeling really bad because you just feel like you're not doing good enough, not even tried your best. And so that can then, of course, continue leading to actually you doing really not that great because now you're just going to say, well, what's the worth it? Because again, it's an all or nothing thing. So the burnout is real.
No, absolutely. And we'll segue into coping skills now as we start to move towards the end of the video, guys. So one of the biggest things, first and foremost, like we acknowledge, right? Perfectionism is black and white. Either I'm perfect or I'm failing. First, we're going to notice that pattern of thinking and we're going to gently challenge it and remind our brain there's gray area, right? There's gray area between those two things. I cannot perform well at a task, but also not be a failure. And also defining for yourself too, like what is failure for you? Like concretely, what would that look like in your life? Is it you being homeless? Because there are some people who are homeless and don't feel like failure. So is there a way to redefine that? Like what does it look like concretely for you? Is failure not getting your degree? Could there be a growth opportunity in even not being able to get your degree? So the point of this, though, is that we can dig further and further to say, really, what is failure at the end of the day? Because a lot of times we don't have a concrete definition. A lot of times we're just scared of this idea of failure. When in reality, even if you look back at every time that you feel like you have failed in your life, a lot of times when we process it through, people grew from those times in their lives, whether they notice it or not. So challenging that black and white, if it's not perfect, then it's a failure. We're going to challenge that, look for some gray in there. Same thing with, like I just said, reframing mistakes as growth opportunities. Yes, those of you who are younger, I'm sure you're tired of hearing this rhetoric already, but looking at how we can choose to write this story of our life and what we've gone through, right? Another good one that I like to ask people too is challenging yourself of like, why are you so motivated for this specific thing to be perfect? So let's look at that. Let's use a concrete example with this. Let's say that you have an assignment, and you find yourself getting stuck in a loop of this assignment, wanting it to be perfect, working it, reworking it, throwing it away, starting it over, whatever it might be. So, okay, why are we motivated for this to be perfect? Well, because I want to make a good grade in the class. Okay, why does that matter to you? Well, I want people to perceive me as that I'm smart or in control or good enough for this major or whatever it might be. That, failing means that I'm not actually good enough to be in college or that I'm not smart, whatever it might be, right? So we want to keep digging into this to see what this thing says about me as a person, right? So if I did fail at this thing, what does that mean about me as a human being? And then once we find that thought, whatever it is, and usually it kind of stings when we find it. So, like, for example, I'm not actually good enough to be in college. I'm not actually smart enough to be here. That stings a little bit when I say that out loud if it's true for me. So, once we find this thought, we can use self-compassion here. So I saw on social media recently, someone said self-compassion is talking to yourself like you would talk to your dog or your cat. I talk to my cats kind of mean, but it's loving meanness. But I hear the point of self-compassion is just talking to yourself like you would talk to the person you love the most. Like, for example, your child or, your partner or your dog or your cat, whatever. It could look something like, hey, even if you don't do well in this assignment, let's be real. You're not very good at English from the start, bottom line. And this has always been hard for us. So, this is a college class. And I hear that a lot from students. They'll say, like, I should be doing better in this class because I've done better in other classes. Or, this is my first English.
Yeah.
Like, I had high expectations for this. And I'm like, just hear what you just said to me. This is the first time I'm taking English. How would you be good at this if this is the first time that you're taking this? You're allowed to have a bad assignment and for things to just not click sometimes. So, self compassion is just kind of injecting that rational, realistic, grounded kindness into our lives that we give other people, but we don't necessarily give ourselves. And you've heard Sonia and I both utilize the strategy of setting good enough standards for certain tasks. So, like we said, kind of taking a pulse of people around us and saying, like, okay, what's good enough for most people? And looking at, and do I have unrealistic standards for myself here? And then a good one too can even be practicing exposure to imperfection. So, for example, submitting a paper without triple checking it. So, we're just taking off one check and we're kind of sitting in that discomfort to show ourselves that the world will not explode if I don't triple check my paper. So once again, there's that line though, right? We want to still put effort and time to a reasonable amount in, but we're also recognizing when we're doing a little bit the most and not triple checking, only double checking something. And like I said, self-compassion, recognizing that vulnerability and uncertainty is just part of learning. As always, we have the counseling center here for student use. You're more than welcome to come by. This is something that we work with a lot of students on. You're definitely not alone in this. Therapy can be helpful. Peer support groups can be helpful. Working with faculty, with mentorship on these issues or your coworkers. Usually having an external sounding board, like Sonia shared so many times, has been so helpful of grounding in reality rather than the perfectionism a lot of the times.
I want to add to that like you don't always have to base it on like is it good enough for other people, but did it accomplish what you wanted it to accomplish?
Yeah. What
That
was the
is
goal?
right.
Yeah.
What was your
Mhm.
goal and can it still accomplish that? Because if it can, then what does it matter if it's at like overdrive 1,000%
Yep.
or the 100% or the 80 or 90%, 70%? As long as did it get accomplished? Like I will reference back to those videos. My goal was that students could watch these videos and attempt these things on their own.
Mhm.
So when I presented them and I was like, but they're not done yet. And my supervisor's like, well, they look pretty done to me.
Yeah.
Then he's like, you went to try to accomplish this. We've tested it out on students. They were able to accomplish what you wanted them to. It's done. Like you're good.
Yeah.
This is good. So I now use that standard. Like, did it accomplish what it was intended for?
Mhm.
Um, and yes, definitely asking thoughts from other people, just kind of reeling them in and saying like I am being too self-critical and I need somebody's view. Is it hitting these points? And so creating a sort of a checklist. Did I accomplish this goal? Which was my goal here? Okay, how has this helped somebody else? And write it down. And so just putting it to where it's not like your perspective specifically, or your emotions are into it. Is just make it a checklist that has it accomplished this, yes or no.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps keep you in check. And so, later you'll mentally see that checklist and be like, okay, take a deep breath. You did a great job.
Yeah.
You did the best you could. One of the other things that I work with. So again, I mentioned that at my house, my family's pretty supportive. So like my husband, again, he's more of like the kind of wing it person. But he is very supportive. He knows that I'm going to do this and he's going to let me do this until I ask for help, because he has said, I have told you to ask me for help, and he will wait because he's trying to get me to be more open and saying, I need you to help me with this, and be okay with he's going to help me the way he's going to help me. And he's like, I'm going to help you. The way that I'm going to do this is the way that I'm going to do it.
Yep.
And I have to be okay with that. So one of the things that we do, he is an anthropology major. And so, he studies a lot of different things. He does this thing that's called wabi sabi. Yes. You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
It's a Japanese aesthetic and worldview. So the part of it that we do is the appreciation of imperfection, impermanence, and simplicity. So, back to the wanting to be everything perfect, decorating my house for Christmas one year. I have 2 rows of lights that I wanted to put on the sidewalk, but they're the same length. But my house has a guardrail for the steps on one side, but not the other. So that already within itself.
That level of perfectionism, yes.
So me putting these lights on the side, they weren't reaching the same length because there's a plant on this side that's deep rooted into the ground, etc. So this is when my son was a few months old. Yeah. I said to myself, this is where it starts. It's going to be wabi sabi. Yes. We're gonna handle this, because you know what? Even though he's months old, he is watching me. I'm not gonna overstress myself and let him feel my stress over this. It's fine. Yeah. People will still drive by, think it looks cool, take a picture and go on. Exactly. It's still decorated. So it's that. So wabi sabi has helped me, and we will say this to our son as well. We'll be like, oh, it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's wabi sabi, and that's fine. And so that's just kind of our new motto that we use around the house and we live by.
I love it. That is amazing. I knew it was coming when you said it too. I was like, oh Lord, I love it.
Yes.
But okay, awesome. Well, we could yap about this for years, probably. So we will cut it here, frankly. But thank you so much, Sonia, for joining us to talk about this, because I feel like this is going to resonate with a lot of people. I feel like I'm glad that we got an opportunity to really dig deep into this topic, because I feel like it's so relatable. But okay, thank you guys for joining us today in your go-to space for honest conversations about mental health and well-being. So we're your hosts, Brittany and
Sonia.
And we're so glad that you spent part of your day with us. Remember, taking care of your mind is just as important as taking care of your body. Be kind to yourself, reach out if you need support, and know that you're never alone. Until next time, take care and take a deep breath.